Hello, and welcome back to another episode of Health Without the System. I am Dr. Tim Scott.
My name is Mia Scott. Welcome back for you listeners and anybody tuning in for the first time. Welcome to our podcast.
I'm kind of tired. Do you think you could use a cup of
Coffee?
Is that what we're going to talk about today?
I think so. Should we?
Yeah, I'm really excited to talk about this.
All right, let's do it. Friend or foe? The truth behind your morning Joe.
So these next two episodes, the one that will air this week and the one that will air next week, we're going to talk about two really important things. Mostly, it's a lot of everybody's routine. There's a lot of societal implications, a lot of social cultures around it, and just things that people do a lot. So let's get to it. The first one this week, we're going to talk about coffee and caffeine. Next week, we're going to talk about alcohol, just to give you guys a little heads up.
Yep. And something that we consume every day. Just guess how many cups are consumed daily.
I could not believe this number. I thought this was crazy.
It's wild.
Yeah.
Over 2 billion cups consumed daily. It is the world's most favorite stimulant, which I believe it. It's a staple in my house, and I love it. So let's talk. This podcast, we're going to talk about, the benefits, the risk, sourcing, how mold can be an issue, the gut effects, some practical hacks that we can have, and just overall in favor of it and who should avoid it.
Absolutely. So first off, let's talk about why we actually love coffee. First and foremost, it's probably the caffeine, although it could be tied with the social aspect, but probably the caffeine.
Yeah, although I feel like the older I get, it's that taste. That first thing in the morning, I love it. We do double shot of espresso. We have our espresso machine that we actually grind our own beans, which we'll get into on how we do that, and the brands that we like to use. But we do a double shot of espresso. Tim just drinks it black with a little bit of cinnamon, and I usually do like a organic cream, preferably raw if I can get my hands on it, or just raw milk, and then I will do just a dash of maple syrup, and I will froth it, and I'm not kidding, guys, when I say it's better than Starbucks. That is how, just palatable it is. It's delicious.
Yeah, I mean, we rarely get Starbucks anymore. First off, the cost. Second, the glyphosate. Third,
the plastics.
The sourcing.
Just the
everything.
cups, all the things.
All right, let's talk about caffeine first off. So what is the mechanism of caffeine? Well, it blocks adenosine, and adenosine is what's known as the sleep chemical. So this is a neurotransmitter in your brain, and coffee actually competitively binds to these adenosine receptors. So basically, it's not that caffeine necessarily stimulates you in this regard, it's that it makes you feel less drowsy. If adenosine can't bind to its receptor because caffeine's there, adenosine can't have its sleep effect on you.
Yep. So less fatigue and more alertness for a lot of people.
Exactly. And so adenosine being the brake system being blocked, essentially now your body can go. So this leads to higher activities of some of the other neurotransmitters such as dopamine, norepinephrine, and acetylcholine. And of course, this can enhance things like mood, focus, motivation, reaction times, all the things that we think we enjoy or perceive as the good benefits of coffee.
Yep. And it can also stimulate, of course, the central nervous system. This is where a lot of that adrenaline, epinephrine that you feel, this is also contributing to the jitters that some might get. But caffeine increases the firing neurons in the brain. The pituitary gland senses that this is basically like an emergency signal, and the adrenal glands release more adrenaline or epinephrine.
Exactly. And that's, again, why we said you might have that increased heart rate, actually, blood pressure, and some of those other physical effects.
Yeah.
There are also the metabolic effects, and caffeine can promote lipolysis, which is the breakdown of fat into fatty acids. And this actually gives your muscles more fuel. You're not necessarily burning significant amount of subcutaneous or visceral fat with coffee, but it does trigger the fat breakdown process and gives your body another source of fuel.
Yeah. It can increase metabolic rates slightly, contributing to the feeling of energy, but like Tim said, it doesn't directly give you that energy. It almost prevents that brain fog, or your brain from registering that you're having some brain fog. So
Exactly. And aside from those metabolic effects, I do sort of like that nutritional angle. One of my favorite things to talk about lately are polyphenols. And coffee contains a wide variety of various bioactive compounds. And the most important are these polyphenols. Now, we've mentioned this on the podcast before, but just for a little refresher, polyphenols are plant-based chemical compounds. Basically, think of them as anti-inflammatory and antioxidant properties. There are a lot of different classes of polyphenols. We've talked about them as we've gone. And today we're going to talk about chlorogenic acids because that's what's present in coffee.
In chlorogenic acids, they're basically potent antioxidants, like Tim said, but they neutralize free radicals and may improve glucose metabolism. For those of you, those free radicals, we've talked about this many times in our podcast. Those are basically little storms of inflammation happening in our body. These are cells that might be damaged, that they create oxidative stress, and your body needs to go and neutralize them, mark them for destruction, get rid of them, and make sure that your body is, excreting them. So the polyphenols were heavy in that. Anything that we can do to increase that, because of course you want to support your body to rid these free radicals so they don't create issues like worst case scenario, cancers, where cells are misfiring very inappropriately.
Exactly. So we've talked about, so imagine the big group is polyphenols. There are many subgroups within that. Resveratrol is another example. We talk about that a lot. But the chlorogenic acids are what we're talking about today. There's two specific ones that pertain especially to coffee: caffeic acid and melanoidins, which is hard for me to say. But basically, these are both anti-inflammatory, and caffeic acids have some anti-inflammatory effects. They can have some, blood vessel protection, tissue protection effects. But the melanoidins, the melanoidins, which are actually, interestingly, most of them are formed when you actually roast the beans. But the cool thing about those is they have antimicrobial properties. And we'll talk about that again a little bit later in this podcast. But we've spoke about different polyphenols and their antimicrobial effects when you talk about gut health, keeping the bad pathogens at bay. Another one that we talked about, which we will also mention again in this podcast, is eugenol. That's one of my favorite ones. We'll bring it up later. But anyway, these can keep opportunistic pathogens or bad players in your gut in check. So coffee does have a positive effect on the microbiome to that extent.
Yep. So just a little recap there. They will reduce oxidative stress, so free radicals that damage DNA, protein, cell membranes, things that need to be fixed. Polyphenols will donate electrons to stabilize these radicals, reducing the cellular damage. They also modulate inflammation. Antioxidants in coffee can downregulate pro-inflammatory cytokines. You've heard of us talk about that before in specific pathways like the NF-kappa B.
Yeah, that's a big one.
Yeah, we hear that and speak about that a lot. Lowering chronic low-grade inflammation that drives conditions like insulin resistance, cardiovascular disease, and potentially even some cancers.
Yep.
And then the last one it does is one of the other things that we touched on was supporting the gut microbiome, like the prebiotics feeding beneficial bacteria, like the metabolites with short-chain fatty acids that further reduce inflammation.
Yeah, so basically what we were talking about there is these polyphenols in coffee actually act like a prebiotic. And if you remember in previous podcasts, we did differentiate prebiotic versus probiotic. Probiotics are actually putting bacteria in your gut. Prebiotics are giving the bacteria in your gut nutrition. It's food for the bacteria. So these polyphenols act as prebiotics and they feed some of the beneficial bacteria. And if you've followed me on TikTok or listened to my Keystone Bacteria species, I talked about butyrate, which is a short chain fatty acid that different bacteria can produce, like bifidobacterium. And butyrate is actually like jet fuel for the gut. It just gets it like 0 to 100 real quick. Lots of positive effects. So these actually are some good things with coffee.
And oddly enough,
and sorry if I'm nerding out a little bit on the microbiome, but gosh, I just get excited about it.
That's okay. It also makes me want a cup of coffee. We should have poured one, although I probably wouldn't have slept, because then we'll go into why you shouldn't drink coffee late at night. But anyway, It is also neuroprotective. It can reduce the risk of Alzheimer's and Parkinson's. I would imagine, I really haven't read a ton of studies on this one, but given the antioxidant property and things like that, I would imagine it would just be anti-inflammatory and antioxidant protective, therefore protecting the brain from some of these conditions.
Yeah. And I mean, I think it's important to note that, yes, there were some, studies that cite this, but it's not like this double-blind, placebo-controlled randomized studies that has said if you drink 3 cups of coffee a day, your Alzheimer's or Parkinson's disease risk is going to go down by X percent. Like, it's not the case. It's just there were some associations, and it was noticed in, some of these studies that these, like you said, anti-inflammatory effects reduce those.
And I'll just say this here before I forget. Same goes for supplements. You can't just have coffee and say, oh, I'm going to protect my brain, my gut, my heart, my vessels, whatever, and then continue to eat your McDonald's. Like, it's just not how it works. But somebody who lives a pretty good lifestyle and dabbles in some coffee, it's actually a beneficial thing. And we will also get into how bad your coffee can be and what you put in it. That makes a difference as well. But just remember, it's an entire picture. It's not just one single-handed thing that you can do to be healthy. So like we talked about, the cardiovascular benefits, lower oxidative stress blood vessels, therefore better improved endothelial function, decreasing risk for strokes, heart attacks, all the things.
Exactly. Yeah. So then we did kind of mention this, but we'll circle back around real quick. So there are some like short-term brain benefits, right? This is why we enjoy drinking coffee. So we mentioned some of that inhibiting the brake system, therefore allowing the body to move a little bit quicker. And there actually are some studies out there that show this can boost learning, working memory, and even some problem-solving skills. Again, I think these effects are sort of short term. They're not necessarily long term. Like you can't just drink coffee all day and have this sort of like, what was that movie where Bradley Cooper like touches into this like,
You're asking me about a movie?
oh yeah, you
I
don't
don't
know
ever.
any
You can
movies.
ask me any movie.
But
I probably
anyway,
haven't
you
seen
don't
it.
just get the, unlock 100% go on it, but these short term effects are definitely there. Also can improve endurance for mentally demanding tasks. So a lot of time people will think like, geez, I got to have that cup of coffee, then I'm going to hit these first couple hours of work really hard.
So that was short term. We already touched on the long term, like the Alzheimer's, mood issues, or cognitive impairment, diabetes, all the things that we talked about for vasculature, and then mood impact. Coffee makes me pretty happy. So
Yeah.
it can reduce risks of depression in some studies, works through the dopamine and serotonin pathways as well.
I just think it's interesting because though, it's actual neurotransmitters. I mean, coffee has effect on different neurotransmitters in your brain. Obviously, that's how a drug is going to work. And I mean, caffeine is the drug in it, but it's really cool when you think about how the actual signaling molecules in your brain are affected by this. So I just like that.
Yeah, for sure. Do you want to talk about who should not be consuming
Yeah.
coffee
So,
to an extent?
and again, I mean, we all know it's coffee, right? Like you got to kind of choose it. We're adults, but we'll talk about some of the people that might want to be a little bit more careful just for completion. Pregnancy, first and foremost. I mean, generally, you do not want to have more than 200 milligrams a day. There are pretty decent amount of data out there that can show association with miscarriages and even low birth weight and early deliveries if you're consuming that more than 200 milligrams a day on average. Some women elect to do 0. That's totally up to them, but 200 milligrams a day or 1 cup should be your max. Anxiety disorders, people, this stimulant effect can obviously worsen anxiety and panic symptoms. And this is again through those neurotransmitter pathways that we discussed. Also, I mean, this kind of goes without being said, but if you have some issues with insomnia, poor sleep, you're not getting restful sleep, then you really have to consider coffee and caffeine and when you're consuming it, because they say at least 6 hours. You need at least 6 hours without
that's
a
the
cup.
half-life. I would say no more than I feel like lunchtime should be your cutoff. And just a reminder, if you're having to have multiple cups of coffee throughout the day, step back and say, I'm not depleted of coffee. What are you doing in your lifestyle, in your food, in your dietary habits, in your exercise regimen, whatever, that's causing you to have these afternoon crashes? Specifically my thyroid patients, if you're preaching that story, a lot of times that they'll get that crash in the afternoon. So just a reminder that yes, you shouldn't be having coffee late, but if you find yourself needing coffee later throughout the day, then you need to take a bird's eye view and say, what can I change within my life?
Absolutely. And people who have certain blood pressure or heart arrhythmias. So this is just an interesting story. I had a patient a while back in the emergency department. This has been many years and I don't remember the details, but he had been in the ER many different times with atrial fibrillation. And it had been like a year or so since he had been in there, and he came back in. He's like, I know why I'm here, doc. And I'm like, what's going on? He's like, I had coffee today. And I'm like, what do you mean? And he's like, well, I had, you can look back at my chart and you can see I was in here for AFib, 10 times within 6 months. And, finally somebody asked me, do you drink energy drinks, a lot of caffeine or coffee? And he's like, yeah, actually about 4 cups a day. So he cut out his coffee and his atrial fibrillation essentially completely stopped. So some people are going to be more sensitive to that. So, hey, if you have something weird going on, like your blood pressure's out of control, you have a lot of palpitations, maybe a heart arrhythmia that's unexplained, consider some of these things. Like maybe maybe you think, oh, I only have 1 cup of coffee a day. It's not doing it. Maybe it is. So anyway.
And we'll touch on mold here real quickly, but I just want to say in general, if I'll have my morning cup, that's a double shot of espresso, and if for whatever reason I have another one in the afternoon, I immediately, within that first hour, I'll get heart palpitations. And that never used to be me. I used to be fine with coffee, but that's my tolerant. Usually 1, maybe 1.5, and I definitely feel it. I get a little bit jittery in the afternoon, but not in the morning. Won't do it in the morning.
For sure. Okay, so like you mentioned, another thing that we really need to consider is the sourcing of our coffee, the quality of our coffee, because mold, mycotoxins, and other impurities in it can definitely run rampant. So mold is probably one of the biggest things to consider because these grow on coffee beans during the actual harvesting. It also can happen in storage and shipping depending on where this is occurring. So you have to think most of the coffee in the world, about 40% of the world's coffee is produced in Brazil. Obviously, the climate there is very hot, very moist. I mean, they've got huge rainforests, right? So obviously you could get mold growth there. Some other countries to be aware of, if you're getting coffee from Vietnam, Colombia, Indonesia, and Ethiopia, the conditions may be right to do this as well.
Yeah, that I forgot to finish my train of thought here, but when we were talking about arrhythmias, mold in general, this is just one random fact there that if you guys are having some weird arrhythmias that nobody can put their fingers on, mold can absolutely be a contributing factor. I have a few of my friends personally that they were having some weird cardiac arrhythmias and, they ruled out everything negative and turns out that they were mold toxic. So, and oddly enough, that's not something we're really taught with at all in the Western medicine
That's
world.
what I was going to say. So how did that diagnosis come?
Which is so, well, it was by me. I did a mold panel on her. So oddly enough, we don't get taught how mold can wreak havoc on our mitochondria, and it can bury into our cells and really just wreak havoc on our body. And it's not necessarily the mold itself, it's what's considered the mycotoxins, which is basically like their byproduct that they release. That's the toxic form. And specifically the ochratoxin A and the aflatoxin, those are the ones that are going to be specific related to food, especially in your coffees. So when I have patients that I've diagnosed with mold, whether that's a critical panel, whether that's in their food, we are assessing right away coffee. I'm asking their sources. Majority of my patients are saying, oh, I have the little Keurig. I have the little, K-cups or whatever. And I'm like, oh my gosh, no, throw that away. Or they'll just have a poor sourcing. But it is very deceptive to have a lot of these brands. Not very many brands are actually clean. So it's easy to fall into, well, I think I'm drinking, good coffee. And then other things that are mold are like oats and wheats and, things like that. But we'll do an entire podcast on mold.
Yeah, and I thought it was interesting when I was looking through our notes on this. We actually really didn't even mention the K-cups. I would hope that by now our listeners know that you shouldn't be drinking your coffee out of a plastic cup. Now, with that being said, if you're getting your own whole beans from a good source and you're grinding them and you have like those reusable metal, like K-cup looking things, that's completely different, right? But the pre-bought plastic K-cups, I mean, you're getting probably bottom of the barrel coffee. Now, I did see a couple good brands. I actually did an Amazon search on these. There are some good, clean, organic brands that you can get in the K-cup form, but they're still stored in plastic, so you're still going to get microplastics. That's the downside. And I think I did see one. I saw one, I think that was paper. It might have been like a biodegradable paper. But anyway, point is, for the most part, that's not how you want to be. So you mentioned the mold, the mycotoxins, and something to remember is these mycotoxins don't just get burnt off in the roasting phase. Some of them can come after that when they're held in storage, but some of them can actually resist the roasting phase too.
Yes, absolutely.
So there are some health risks. I'm just going to buzz through this. It's actually the opposite effect. So how there's like some kids out there that if you give them Benadryl, they actually go absolutely crazy versus, other kids immediately fall asleep when you give it. Well, that like 1% of kids, parents are like in the ER, I can't give my kid Benadryl. They will go absolutely nuts. There are people out there who are very sensitive to caffeine and actually have more the opposite effects, like they get fatigued, they get brain fog. You can even put stress on your body, leading to problems with your immune system. Long-term chronic exposures for these people, and especially from like poor quality beans, can increase the risk of liver stress, kidney damage. Again, I'm not going to focus on that too much. Just understand, if you react poorly to it, put the brakes on it.
And coffee can legally contain things. This is going to gross you out. And these are things that I knew. How long have we been doing our own purity coffee and the Four Sigmatic? It's been years.
It's been a few years now.
Coffee was one of the first things that once we switched to organic and I kind of dug into what that means, my mind was just blown. Number one being insect fragments. Mm-hmm. Yes, literally ground up bugs. Specifically, it was noted to be more of roaches. But this is why we do whole beans, because a lot of times they take the whole beans, of course. Those are the best quality because, of course, you can see an obvious bug. Now, granted, you're still going to get insect fragments on that, but versus the ground where they can take a massive batch, and some of these beans can actually be like rancid, and they're more of like bad, less pretty beans, and then, of course, these bugs, and then those will be your ground. So I will never get ground coffee. I choose to do the whole beans, and we ground it ourselves. The other thing that the FDA will actually allow up to 10% of the grounded beans to be insects, which is insane that when you pour your cup of coffee, there's a very good chance that 10% of that coffee is liquid roaches.
Yeah. So lots are considered adulterated if greater than or equal to 10% of beans by count are insect infested or damaged, or if greater than 10% are moldy. So these are common thresholds. So, I mean, that's a huge amount. And that's why
it's disgusting. And I forgot it's not even insects. They put rodent hairs and droppings.
Yep.
And then, of course, the mold and mycotoxin. But once again, Like these things aren't super regulated. They're not touching every batch. They're not, making sure that everything is tested. It has to be a good coffee company. So that's the FDA for you.
I do also think it's important to note that these are the quality or contamination limits for beans entering the supply. These are not for brewed coffee. So imagine now you might have this poor quality coffee coming somewhere, and then maybe it's your local diner, maybe it's a Starbucks, maybe it's a McDonald's, I don't know. But once it goes in that machine, the water that comes through that machine, whatever it sits in, makes it in your cup, wherever that cup's, there's a lot of things that can,
Yeah, they are not cleaning out the McDonald's machine daily, guys. That is disgusting, molded water coffee. But anyway, U.S. has no specific numeric limit on the ochratoxin A. That's what we were talking about for the mold. The FDA is supposed to regulate these mycotoxins via compliance program, but we know how the FDA works, so I don't know how good that one is.
Yeah. So how do we get around this?
Yeah,
what do we do?
How do we fix it? Well, number one, like we said, choose organic beans. I actually didn't even mention this, but pesticides. Of course, we talk about glyphosate. The beans or the coffee beans are one of the most heavily sprayed crops ever. There's actually no limit on how many times that they can be sprayed. So if you are like the worst case scenario is like you're drinking non-organic coffee. It was already grounded. You have no idea where it comes from. That is just a giant cup of glyphosate bug and a smidgen of coffee. So that's your worst case scenario. So how do you do the opposite? You're going to choose organic beans. My absolute favorite company is Purity Coffee. I've been using them for a very long time. I get their full whole beans. We ground them ourselves. The other one is Four Sigmatic.
You're really jumping ahead. We had the brands after we talked about all the things to look for.
I just have to. That they have a mushroom blend. But anyway, so choose organic beans. That's a good start. And then single origin versus the blends. Of course, that's an obvious. You don't want 1,000 beans from 1,000 different origins blended into one little
It's kind of the same as your ground beef, right?
Yes.
Yeah. You don't know what's going on all these different farms. Why get 1,000 farms in one hamburger?
Yeah. Which is why when, you get these recalls in stores for meat or whatever it is, they just basically say, like, if you've bought it in the last however many days or whatever, because they can't batch it like that because there's so many sources. And just a random fact out there, I think it's 200. And when you consume a McDonald's patty, there's over 200 different cows in a single patty. That is how diverse that mash is. So the same thing applies for your coffee. You want single origin. Same thing applies for your olive oil. You don't want it for your honey. You don't want it from multiple different sources.
Yep. Third-party testing. Some companies will advertise mold and mycotoxin testing. Mm-hmm. Remember, that can just kind of be a marketing trick. They can put that on there without really doing it every batch or thoroughly. But mycotoxin-free, that can be a gimmick. So what you really want to do, if it's not a trusted brand, like not one that people have recommended or you found it on your own, you want to see if they actually publish their results of third-party testing and if you can see that.
And if they do publish the third-party testing, just take a few seconds and Google or ChatGPT that third-party testing and make sure that it's actually a legit company, they're in business, and they're not employed through the company that's trying to test for. So there's even further digging off of the third-party testing digging.
Exactly. I agree with that. Roast level and freshness. So darker roasts may lower some of the mold toxins, but really the freshness matters more. Stale coffee is more likely to harbor contaminants. I think that's just common sense. So you want fresh beans as much as you can.
Yep. And then we already talked about the packaging cues. So the single origin organic, the mycotoxin, those are going to be the best ones. Avoid cheap bulk tins with zero info. That's a big red flag.
Agreed.
Those are also those are often the lowest grade beans and that should not be into your house.
So quick recap, you're looking for single origin or tested for mycotoxins, roasted in small batches. Those are the buzzwords that you're looking for on the label. And of course, if it's not a known brand, you might want to do your own research on the third-party testing.
Correct. And I get some of these bags can be pricey. I think I pay $16 for my Four Sigmatic, and that's not bad compared to what I pay for my Purity coffee.
When I buy a 10-pound bag of Purity for the ER, it's like $125.
But it matters. Well, that's a 5-pound bag.
10-pound bag.
10-pound bag?
Yeah.
Okay, that's a little extreme.
I think it's 10
the whole
pounds.
ER?
Yeah, we make it every day there. So
see, well, there's your first problem. He's making it for an entire staff every day. It doesn't have to be super expensive, but just remember, guys.
I don't make it. Sandy does. We have to give her credit in case she's listening. Sandy makes the best coffee.
If you're listening, hi, Sandy. I know you from these. Anyway, so the one thing I was going to say for the coffee is if you guys think that you're spending a lot of money, imagine how many times you go through Starbucks in a month. Look at your receipts. Look at your, just track that. You're not going to spend more than you would at Starbucks. You're just not.
No.
So, and We just don't do it.
$120 for 10 pounds versus $350 for a cup, you know. So,
Yeah,
I
we
mean,
should
do
break
the
that
math.
down to what that is
I actually
per cup,
I have it in here. I don't know where I put it.
Okay.
Somewhere.
All right. So good brands to go for: Bulletproof, Purity, Kion, Life Boost, Vita Cup, and Four Sigmatic. I have tried, I think, only half of those brands, but they are very reputable. These are brands that are very good to start with. Personally, my favorite, I think it's just the taste. The Four Sigmatic, the mushroom blend. I love some lion's mane and stuff in the morning. It gives me extra focus, but the Purity is definitely up there as well. Okay, so let's talk a little bit about coffee and the gut. The digestive stimulation, of course, you know, you have your cup of coffee and it can sometimes react or respond real quickly. So that increases your stomach acid production. That actually can have reflux for some, but then it stimulates the motility, which is where, you know, the morning bathroom trigger becomes a thing if you are drinking coffee first thing in the morning because of that stimulating motility in your gut. We already talked about the microbiome effect, how it helps the polyphenols, or the polyphenols can help your microbiome as well. They can actually reach the colon largely undigested. I think you said that earlier, actually, talking about the
I'm over here Googling because I was trying to figure this out. I really wanted to, but I don't know where I have it in my notes. But
that's okay.
There's a lot of cups of coffee in a pound of coffee. So let's just even give a low estimate and say there's 15 cups in a pound. And I think it's probably more than that.
There's way more than 15
But let's just say there's
pound.
15 cups in a pound. So that would be, if brewed cups, let's say it's $3 a cup at Starbucks. That's $45 for a pound of coffee. So 10 pounds would be $450 if you were buying brewed cups at Starbucks. And that's a conservative estimate. So
yeah.
Anyway.
Regardless, I don't think you're ever going to spend more than you would at Starbucks or something close to that. A few things I do want to touch on in general is for some people who might have like an adrenal fatigue or adrenal issues in general where you need that morning, that natural cortisol peak to happen, you might want to delay caffeine by 90 to 120 minutes after awakening. This also gives adenosine a chance to build up, so caffeine can actually have a more effect on some people, more focus and things like that. It can also help reduce morning jitters. So if you feel like you're somebody who has coffee, like when they're driving to work and you're just like, you feel like you can conquer the world, also you're so anxious, you just want to explode, then maybe try to wait a little bit to have your coffee for a good hour and a half.
I think that's a good practice anyway, and that might not be reasonable.
I like my cup of joe right away, but you do that.
Yeah, you really should let your morning cortisol peak before you start stimulating, you know, your HPA axis. So
yeah, I get it. You know, we have our, when I wake up to 4 kids and I'm immediately glued to my laptop, I need my coffee immediately too. So hydration, of course, we didn't even touch on that, how caffeine can actually sometimes dehydrate you. So make sure it's actually a mild diuretic. So as you're drinking caffeine, make sure that's not your only source of liquid. Obviously, you have 1 cup a day, and that's all that really should be it. Maybe 1 or 2 cups in the morning, and that should last you the day, with the rest being electrolytes, water, and everything else.
Did you talk about the preparation section in here?
No, I did not.
So we did, as we mentioned earlier, it is important what you put in your coffee because we do see a lot of these artificial sweeteners.
Oh, yes.
But specifically, think of all the things you can buy at the grocery store, you know, pumpkin this, whatever.
That's a perfect time.
You know?
It's in season to be pumpkin spice and all the things.
Yeah.
Stay away from those creamers, guys. If you flip it over, it's nothing but added sugars, guars, gums, high fructose corn syrup, natural flavors, which is
emulsifiers like your polysorbate 80.
So
I mean, just
bad,
all the
bad
things
for
that
you.
Not only wreak havoc on your metabolism, but wreak havoc on the microbiome. Guys, we talk about these topics every week on the podcast. I hope they're starting to ring a bell and hit home with you. So anyway, starting off with your black coffee, if you're going to add something, you know, organic grass-fed cream or half and half is your best additive from that standpoint. Sweetener-wise, I like, personally, if I'm going to sweeten my coffee now, I really like a touch of organic maple syrup. It was a little bit weird to get used to at first, but now it's absolutely delicious to me.
It's so good.
Same with raw, unfiltered, organic honey. If you can get that locally, great. I don't find that around here, so I just have to buy either local honey, which generally isn't organic. I can buy local, raw, unfiltered honey. It's just usually not organic. Or I can buy non-local, organic, raw, unfiltered honey. And we have mentioned this before, but we have a partnership with Lineage Provisions, lineageprovisions.com. You can use the code RIXA Health. They do have a very good raw, unfiltered, organic honey. Absolutely delicious. So anyway, sweeteners,
so
please don't
and
use
their beef sticks. Their beef sticks
the
are
beef,
so
the
good
garlic
too.
beef sticks are
garlic onion. They're beef liver sticks.
Yeah.
But
If you buy any, it's beef organ, but not just
That's what I
liver,
meant,
all the organs. If you buy anything off of there, remember the code RIXA Health. Anyway, so that's what you want for sweeteners, right? Avoid pure sugar if you can. Obviously, if you are going to put pure sugar in, you want organic cane sugar if you have to. Now, here's another one that I really like. I like cinnamon in my coffee. I usually try not to sweeten it. I usually just put cinnamon in it. Another good one is clove. Now, I don't personally do this. You can get, I mentioned eugenol earlier in the podcast, and eugenol is a polyphenol that's very good for your gut microbiome. It has antibacterial and actual bactericidal effects on different bad bacteria in your gut. But you can find this in clove oil or clove, and then cinnamon oil or cinnamon. So I like to put a little cinnamon in my coffee, and now you are literally promoting gut health by doing this, in addition to the polyphenols in the coffee.
Yeah, and try it, guys. I mean, if you have a frother, which is a $5 thing you can add on Amazon, and don't even get me started on Tim yelling at me for a frother that didn't work, and then I gifted it to my mom, who then I went, where did we go? Was it Florida? Where were we at? Where I was using it? Yogi.
Yeah,
we went to Yogi Bear, and she brought the frother that I gave her, and I used it, and I was like,
it was a beast.
This is the most powerful frother I've ever used in my life.
We were in South Carolina visiting Brian, and they had the same one.
Oh, it was the same one. But she did bring it to Yogi. She did. Because my coffee about flew out of my cup. Long story short, the one that's like $4.95 and has the most reviews
on Amazon
is the one that Tim
I was like, what is this junk piece of plastic?
It is
Get rid
very
of this.
plastic.
So she we didn't even turn it on. She just gave it to your mom. Yeah.
Put batteries in it.
And then when we actually used it, we're like, this thing is like power mode. What the heck?
So guess what's in my Amazon cart right now? That $4 frother, because our other one just died yesterday that I threw away. So my point of this is get a frother. And if you are having your coffee, put a little bit of cream or half and half, but make sure it's either cream or half and half, because just milk, it doesn't really froth it like you need it to, unless it's raw. Then I usually can get it to do that. But take your frother with a little bit of maple syrup and a little bit of that cream and get that going. And it turns into this most creamiest coffee ever. Guys, I'm telling you, you will not drink Starbucks again. And if you want to do like your own caramel, you can make an own date caramel where you like soak your dates and put it in a food processor, and it becomes this caramel-ish. It tastes like caramel, and you can add your own flavors.
Dates taste a lot like caramel.
You can also, it's pumpkin spice season, so you can also get actual pumpkin spice powder, like that doesn't have to be toxic, and you can get some pumpkin puree from a can that's organic,
pumpkin puree,
and put a dabble in your cup at the bottom and put your milk in there and froth it up.
Or it's very easy, guys. You can go to Google or Chat GPT and ask it for some recipes.
Yep.
Just feed it these couple ingredients that we've talked about. Say things like dates, organic maple syrup, organic pumpkin purees. Tell it the flavors that you want. I'm telling you, it can come up with some amazing recipes.
And make sure you tell it clean, organic, no added sugars, no seed oils, no, like you can basically talk to it like you're talking to a human. So use that to your advantage. And then of course, Christmas, you can have, we used to, for the kids' hot chocolate that we make, we would take the mints. At least I did this for Lincoln, and I would melt some mints in there. So now you have a minty flavor. You can alter your flavor. Apple pie, they make an apple pie allspice that we use for flavoring as well. So you don't need these frou-frou things that are like the skinny dip. I think that's what they're called, skinny something, on Amazon, where they're basically a 0 calorie sweetener and flavor, but they're so bad for you. If you read the ingredients, you can get things way
ingredients, read the labels.
Natural.
Go back to podcast episode 3, food labels.
I feel like we were just such babies at episode 3. We should do this all over again. But
we will eventually. We got a lot to get through before we start rehashing
If you haven't
these.
followed us on our journey now, go back and listen to everything. And if you're not a new listener and you've been with us, you obviously know you shouldn't bring a thing into your house without flipping it over and reading the ingredients. You're only doing yourself a disservice to you and your family. So.
And you should know that we're going to ruin everything good about food in your life.
Except this one. I'm going to call out Meredith right now because she always tells me, Meredith is our social media girl. We love her to death. And her and Brittany always say that we ruin things. Except this episode, because we actually didn't ruin coffee this time. Unless you have five cups plus a day, then we'll ruin it for you.
Right. Or unless you're putting alcohol in it, then we'll ruin it on the next episode.
Kahlua is not going to get your brain fog and everything.
There was one other thing I wanted to mention. A lot of people do use coffee as a way to actually get collagen or protein in their day. So a lot of my clients that I talk to really like adding a scoop of their hydrolyzed beef collagen. You can actually, Mia uses a non-flavored one that she'll put in coffee sometimes.
I totally forgot about that.
I buy the same brand, but it's chocolate, and I like putting it. So I keep that one at work. And when I go to work, I put a scoop of the hydrolyzed chocolate collagen in my coffee. And when I'm home, I usually just do cinnamon, or if I sweeten it, with organic maple syrup. So anyway, the point is you can have it in different variations. And there are a lot of people who actually put a scoop of their protein powder in their coffee. Again, you have a good frother, mix it up. I'm not going to lie. When I've done that, it really does not change the texture.
For what? Collagen?
Well, collagen for sure.
Collagen is fine.
In protein, it depends on the kind you're using.
Protein powder, I've yet to find a good protein powder that actually works well and tastes fine to coffee. However, I will say that if I do this as a cold, iced shake, like an ice smoothie, and I add a shot of espresso in there, then it's delicious. But if I try to put protein powder in hot coffee, it's like these powdered poof balls and it just tastes terrible.
Yeah, I will say I do get some powder poof balls in there. When I use the frother, it's okay, but I really like, I mean, I like Truvani protein in general. I can't do whey. For those of you that know me, I'm allergic to whey. So Truvani has a pea-based protein, and I really like the chocolate one in my coffee when I do it. But they also have a chai one that Mia bought that I really don't like, but I like it in coffee. I'll tell you that.
That's weird. I didn't know that. Well, it has cinnamon and stuff in it. You like that and the
Yeah.
vanilla. But hang tight. We are in the works, fingers crossed, hopefully, of somehow doing some our own collagen powder and protein powder grass-fed from the U.S. and I believe Brazil. So hang tight for pending future
we got some good
plans.
sources on that.
Yeah, we got some things coming up
Okay,
the
let's
pipeline.
wrap it up soon. We're ranting a little bit.
Yeah, I'm tired.
I did want to talk about this real quick. Coffee is ritual. You know, we're going to talk about alcohol as ritual in the next episode, and we do spend a lot of time. We call it the base of the pyramid in functional medicine, where you talk about your fitness, your sleep, your social interactions. There's also the core of the matrix, which is your mental, physical, emotional, spiritual health. Coffee is a ritual. It can bring people together. We've talked so much about happiness that can come from social support, emotional support. So there is a lot of positive benefit associated with, let's say you meet a group of friends at Starbucks and have a cup of coffee, or you meet them at a park or whatever it is. Let's not forget about that.
And let's not forget about tea, which we should also do a podcast on. But tea is also amazing and can also be a ritual with multiple different flavors and beneficial things for the body. So
Agreed. Don't give up your social circle, you know, and this is a great way to do that.
yeah. So power, or the main takeaway point here, coffee is very powerful. It's not just a drink. It can affect your brain, heart, gut, longevity, all the things, but within moderation. Of course, you don't want to be consuming this all day throughout the entire day. So not safe for everyone, especially like we said, pregnant women, anxious sleepers, anybody who deals with anxiety at the baseline in general, or somebody who might have some heart issues or gut sensitivity. But if you don't fit any of those categories, coffee's likely okay for you and can be an antioxidant and brain protection and boost your performance.
Yeah, don't rely on it. You shouldn't be having a cup of coffee in your hand all day, every day. It should be, you know, a treat maybe in the morning or the afternoon. And don't forget to cut it off not long before bed. I'm already on it. You don't have to copy it.
Although it's ironic because I feel like that you like sip on your coffee for hours, and
It does take me a while.
wildly mad. I don't know why.
It takes me about 3 hours to drink a cup of coffee.
There's just no
on
way.
average.
It just drives me nuts. Anyway, okay.
Thank you guys very much for tuning in this week. Please like and share. I'm telling you, it really does help if you could share this on your social media. We now have the webpage healthwithoutthesystem.com you can go to, so you don't have to click a different link for Apple, a different link for this or that. You can just go to that webpage and then get to the source where you listen to podcasts. You can share that webpage with a friend. We would really appreciate it.
We are constantly working to build our webpage in general to make everything better too. So I would love to eventually add some more resources there, free, of course, for educational purposes on anybody that it could help with a weight journey or wellness journey actually at all. So
we
undertake
are
to get
growing
that.
a pretty significant blog on there. I would
Yes.
encourage people, if you want to see, you know, free resources on, a lot of it has to do with weight loss, weight maintenance, but just health in
Thyroid,
general.
yeah.
It all comes from a functional medicine standpoint. Everything's very clean. We just have a lot of cool stuff on there. You really should check out the webpage. That one's rixahealth.com, that webpage that we're talking about with the blog.
Yeah.
Our podcast is healthwithoutthesystem.com.
And for those of you who have started us, you know, maybe months ago, check out our website again. Like I said, we're constantly updating things and providing free resources for our patients or guests or anybody who the public who just wants to listen to us. So
Just a reminder, this podcast is for informational purposes only, and it is not medical advice. It is not a substitute for professional care, diagnosis, or treatment. Always consult with your healthcare provider before making any changes to your health routine. Remember that you have the power, and where can they get the knowledge?
from us at RixaHealth.
Right here.
And Health Without the System. Thanks, guys. Like, share, and follow for more.
Join in next week. That's it.